Hey there fellow art lovers and fans of all things painted, welcome back. Today we're going to be painting a lizard folk barbarian, so let's begin. The first stage was to sketch in the overall pose. I got this neat looking pose of a figure holding a rod from Pose Maniacs. Of course I switched this rod out for something a bit more appropriate for a barbarian, namely a great axe. I used various different reference images of lizards that I wanted to pull a couple of attributes from for my character, such as the horns from one, the overall head shape from another, and the frills from a frilled lizard, though I ultimately decided to put these in the form of a sail running down the back, as I find the head frills would be too intrusive and obscure too much of the pose. On the second layer, I also added other details such as the armor my character would be wearing. I tried a few different pauldron designs before settling on a horn design which I felt would suit our lizard man quite nicely, reflecting his thorny exterior. The second part of the sketch concentrated on his elk totem animal. In D&D, when a barbarian reaches their third level, they can choose their primal path. Our lizard man chose the totem warrior path, and his beast is the elk, as I wanted something majestic but powerful, and also find the horns coincided quite nicely with the antlers. Then it was time to block in the colour. Recently I learned a new technique involving using the lasso tool to section off areas of your artwork, which then allows you to easily use the fill tool to fill the area without worrying about the colours not going right up to the edges. Each colour had its own layer, which meant I didn't have to worry about different sections overlapping where they shouldn't, though I later consolidated this all down into a single layer before I started shading. First, I selected the entire layer and applied a shadow effect to the whole thing. I could then use the eraser tool to pick out the areas that would be hit by our light source. I then selected individual portions of our character and worked in more shading and began adding in highlights, such as on the chest scales where they catch the light. I repeated this process on each part of our character. I then started to paint in the scales. This can be quite a long, drawn-out process, but I find it worthwhile as it adds that bit more detail. I used another reference image of a lizard to map out the pattern of the scales, using ones of different shapes and sizes on different parts of the body. I also made sure to arrange the scales so they helped show the volume of the surface they're being applied to, so our lizard wouldn't end up looking flat. And I tell ya, flattened lizard is no good. I then added in some overall highlights and deeper shadows to further help with that. Then I used the lasso tool to select portions of the scales to add deeper shadows to, such as where the scales are under the armor or in the shade of the horns and larger overlapping scales. Then it was time to add in more facial details such as the beginnings of the eye, the scales around the eyelid, and the mouth details. For these I used the frilled lizard as reference, and the small green section in the mouth shows where the skin is thinner and lets light through. The eyes are the window to the soul, and as this is a barbarian it would need to be a very ferocious and somewhat bloodshot window. A barbarian's strength relies greatly on their primal rage, and nothing says primal energy or a bad hangover like bloodshot eyes. I also gave him some big chompers. Lizard folk subsist on a diet of meat and his teeth would need to reflect that. Then for the sail I followed the same process as with the rest of the body, painting in scales and then adding in more overall shadows and highlights. It was also around here I started adding in more colour to the scales on a layer below the shading. This was to help make our lizard look a bit more colourful and exotic. For the axe, I added in shadows on the beveled edges and some nicks and cuts on the axe to show that this was a weapon frequently used. Both the armor and the weapon have a scaly motif to them to reflect their owners. Hopefully these particular scales were not sourced from other lizard folk. Then I turned my attention to the totem animal, using a mid-tone orange for the overall colour before going in and shading in the details. I then used a gradient map to the colour so that the colour scheme ranged from whites and pale oranges right down to a deep russet orange. Then I turned my attention to the background, giving it a similar gradient with dark shadows on the right and the bright, shining beacon of light coming from the top left, our light source. Finally, I added a starburst effect behind the head of our character and a drop shadow. This was done as a way to show the rage he was tapping into. For the starburst I contemplated putting it in front but settled on behind, but larger as it would otherwise be too intrusive. And with that, I was done. Let's have a look at the final piece.
And if you enjoyed what you just watched, please be sure to leave the video a like and subscribe and ring the bell to see more content.
And if you want to get straight into some more art, you can go and watch this video for my latest content, or this one for something random.